Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Morning Brew. Episode 4, actually, which is crazy because if you go back and look at the rest of my channel, most gameplay series don't even last this long. So, just goes to show the amount of commitment I'm actually putting into this right here. I mean, I'm not in high school anymore, so I would assume I'm putting a lot more effort and work into these videos than back then. I also thought my high school videos were good when I was in high school, and now I cringe at said videos of me and my friends in high school. Crazy how that works, right? It's super crazy. But anyway, welcome to the 4th episode of the Morning Brew. Today we are continuing the Commander rankings of all of the decks that I have built throughout my Magic career. And of course, we are drinking coffee. Today we are drinking a non-disclosed giant company that, giant company that is not super good or anything, but that's what we're drinking today. Hopefully you know the drill by now. We are going to be looking at the rest of the Commander decks that I have built in my Magic career. We have 16 decks that we're going over, and 4 of them being already sleeved, so we're only really going over 12, but we're still mentioning those 4 just for quality content and everything. Just some extra time I get to sit around with you guys and chill out for a little bit. And if you don't already know the criteria, oh wow, what's this? A perfectly timed thumbnail? That's crazy! What? If you haven't already seen episode 1, I highly suggest you go back and watch this episode over here. It was a lot of fun to make. It ran a little long, but whatever. It's always going to be like that, I feel like. And then today we're going to be going over all the other decks that I didn't get to in that episode. And if you don't already know the criteria of how we are going to go over them, we're just going to be talking about how powerful I think the deck is at this given point in time, how good, easy, and how cool the game plan was for that deck trying to pull off, how much I really like the card and the deck as a whole. Was it fun for the table? If it's fun for you, you also need to think about, like, okay, is this fun for my opponents to play against and everything? And then finally, how many times I've played it. You know, the more times you play something, the more times you like it. That's just, I feel like that just comes with the trade with almost anything. And then we will be including all of the upgraded precons being decks that you can buy right out of the box and everything. And I think there's not that many more to go over. So yeah, so let's just jump right in, shall we? So, the first deck we will be going over today is Armix and Akiri. So, you guys have already heard this guy. You already know what Armix does. He's one of my favorite cards of all time. He's the homie. And then Akiri is another partner card because they're both partner commanders and everything. But Akiri is a card that I have never, ever casted while being in this deck and everything. I am simply using her for colors, and eventually, or not even eventually, I've thought about taking Akiri out because I've never played her before and everything, and I kind of want to play the other commander. So I don't know how you guys or other Magic players out there, write in the comments down below if you think I should take Akiri out. And Akiri is Boros, so white and red, and then Armix is black, so it's a black, red, and white commander deck. And let me know if you guys think I should take Akiri out and put in Bruce Tarl. I know, so the deck is an artifact deck and everything. That is the whole point of it, is to cast a bunch of artifacts, sacrifice the artifacts so they're in my graveyard, maybe discard some of them because of Armix, because Armix cares about discarding, as we've talked about in the other episode, and he also cares about how many artifacts you control and how many artifacts are in your graveyard. And Akiri says she will get a +1/+0 for each artifact I control. However, I've never casted her. I've never really been at a point where oh, I really need a creature right now that's big power from all the artifacts. Like, there has just never been a point when I've needed that, even though I've controlled like 20 plus artifacts on the battlefield. Not at any given point, but definitely in the late game for sure. So let me know in the comments if anyone cares at all for that. But with that being said, Armix and Akiri are sleeved commanders and are going into the sleeved tier. Easy and simple as that. The next deck we are going over is Falco Spara. So Falco Spara is from New Capenna, and New Capenna is a whole set that has to do with gangsters, mobs, the Roaring Twenties, all of that. And I was kind of excited about this set and everything. I really like 3 color pairings, and I like it when Magic creates either a plane of existence or just like makes cards that fit, that specifically go over the color pie and everything. An example would be Ravnica, because Ravnica is all about the 10 color pairings you can have of the dual colors and everything. New Capenna was all about these 5 mob bosses that just ruled over this plane of existence, just like in Ravnica, but they were all like 3 color pairings instead, because we've already been to another plane of existence where 3 color pairings were adherent and were a part of the culture and everything, but this was to fill in the 5 color pairings of 3 color that we hadn't gotten yet. So I was excited about it. I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of the setting, I guess. I think the Roaring Twenties are a cool idea, but with me, I much prefer a fantasy setting. I even would have taken a little bit of steampunk in there, but this was just like way too into the theme of the Roaring Twenties that I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it, if that made sense. But with anyway, Falco Spara Pact Weaver. For 1 of any color, a green, a white, and a blue, you get a 3/3 bird demon creature. And that was another thing, is that all of the leaders of these different mobs were demons, which I thought was actually a really cool idea, that like demons were running the show in the background. I thought that was cool and everything. But Falco has flying and trample. Falco Spara Pact Weaver enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. So really good. And if you don't know what a shield counter is, Falco, if he would be dealt damage or if it would die during combat or any other sort of thing, the shield counter is removed and then no damage is dealt to Falco. And shield counters were invented for this set. I think it was a really cool idea and is fun as well. It works kind of like totem armor, but not, I wouldn't say as good, but it definitely has like its advantages and everything. Like you can get, if you have a card that says make another counter, and if it doesn't specify, you can just get another shield counter. So they're just like +1/+1 counters, or a menace counter, or any other sort of counter in Magic. You can always add them and then take them away and such. But that's not all though. Falco also lets you look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying its other cost. So, honestly, Falco is a really, really, really good card. And I'm not going to say that I didn't do them justice. I built a Bant, being this color pairing, counter deck. So it was basically just like get a bunch of counters out, proliferate as much as possible, and proliferating is an ability where you just keep multiplying the amount of counters you have on everything. So get a bunch of counters, play all the cards from the top of my deck. I just don't really think the deck itself performed very well. I don't know if I dove deep enough into the counters. I think I really just wanted to build a Bant commander, which is, even though, like, yes, I do believe anyone should make the deck they want to create. If you're just making a deck for color's sake, I don't think the player who built that deck would really like the deck at the end of, like, not maybe not at the end of the day, but like after a very long time of playing, you might get bored of it, which was my thing. I just got really bored of Falco. The whole thing was just putting counters on counters, and I just don't really think the synergies I had really lined up. It's been a while since I've unsleeved them, so I don't exactly remember every single card that was in here. But to not really go too much in depth, we're just going to be placing Falco into the C tier, unfortunately. Really good card, like all of these, I think, but just like not what I was exactly planning on. I think that was the thing. I think I had an idea going into Falco, and then after some point in time, I either changed the game plan too much or I didn't go too far into the game plan that it just didn't really succeed all that much. I got a few wins from the deck. It was fun to play, but it just kind of got boring after a while, which kind of is a theme of a lot of these cards and everything. But with that being said, let's go over a new deck. This being Melik. All right, so Melik is very interesting. Melik is from, I don't know if they're specifically from a precon, or maybe they are, but basically, remember when I said in the first episode that Estrid was the first ever commander deck that I ever bought? I did indeed get the precon deck with Melik in the deck. However, I did not pay for it. And that is a story for a whole other day. So with that being said, Melik Izzet Paragon is a 2/4 for 4 of any color, a blue and a red. Play with the top card of your library revealed. So it's just revealed to everybody, not only to you, but just you flip it over and whatever's on top, everyone can see. You may cast instant and sorcery spells from the top of your library. Very good ability right off the bat. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your library, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. So, Melik is a super cool commander, and I really like them. Like, there was a reason why, because Melik he does not have a commander deck. He does not have a precon, but there was a creature, I think it was Mizzet. He's like a goblin guy. It was his precon. However, I just really liked Melik a whole lot more as the commander instead of Mizzet or whatever that dude was or anything. And I can definitely, like, as I'm traveling back in time in my brain to like 2018, 2019, when I, had this deck and everything, I'm remembering like some of it, and I really did like Melik a whole lot. However, this was at the time when I didn't really buy Magic cards or anything a whole lot, so I really only used the cards in the precon and also whatever cards I had laying around. And let's just say that the deck did not synergize at all. It was trying to do so many different things, and I don't think I delved into Spellslinger as much as I should for this deck. It just ended up being very sloppy, and this was also back in the old Magic days of precon commanders were not very good. You definitely got your value for sure. You got more than $40 worth of cards, but they weren't very good. Like, you would get good cards, don't get me wrong, but like the mana base was awful. You would have like 20 basics you probably have 20 plus basics, which is like way too much. Like, even for a 2-color deck, like going over 20 in terms of basic lands is just not what you want to do, and will, if anything, just slow you down because you don't. Like, what if you draw a mountain when you really need an island? I think that was definitely the case I got into when it came with this deck and everything. And also, I just put way too many high-costed cards. So, because of how sloppy I really had the deck, it's going in D tier. There wasn't any way that it wasn't going to end up in D tier. All right, next. Let's talk about Omnath 3 colors. So this is the third and final time Omnath will be making an appearance in these videos. So, Omnath, Locus of the Royal. For one of any color, a green, a blue, and a red, you get a 3/3 elemental. When Omnath, Locus of the Royal, enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target elemental you control. If you control 8 or more lands, draw a card. So, awesome. Again, all of the Omnaths, including this one, are all so good. Like, I don't know what Wizards did to really make these Omnath cards so good. Like, they focused hard on Omnath and like the card creation process for this guy, and it shows for sure. Like, this whole card reads so well, and elementals, at least at the time, because this came out during M20, which was one of my favorite sets at the time, simply because of the fact that, again, elementals are one of my favorite creature types because of the fact that they can be almost anything. Like, they're like, for example, air elemental is just like is just this super. I mean, it depends on the art iteration, obviously, because different artists have different interpretations, which is awesome, which is a cool thing in Magic that I think more people should appreciate. Kind of the fact that we get reprints of cards, and more time than none, we will get a different artwork of that card, which is so cool to see. But elementals could be almost anything. And, like, as you can see, like, with Omnath, he's this, I don't want to say he's a jelly bean, but, like, some people in the Magic community call him a jelly bean. I just see him as this just raw force of nature energy, and that's, like, what he's personifying and everything. So that was the route I was trying to take this deck into, was Elemental Tribal, and, of course, I did not have the best elementals at the time. If anything, I was using crappy uncommon elementals that didn't really do a whole lot. Maybe I was trying to do some enter the battlefield effects, which is fine and everything, but also I just don't ever really think I played this deck a whole lot because I was trying to get as many different elementals as I could, so I just don't really think I put in a lot of good ones. In all honesty, honestly, like this is just, like, again, like, I'm rereading this card and I'm like, dang, I would really like to remake this at some point in my life, I feel like. Because also, I think another reason why I took it apart was that elementals are so widespread throughout different colors, is that I wanted to somehow put white and black elementals in this deck, but obviously I couldn't because this is a teamer color pairing, teamer being green, blue, and red. So with all of that being said, and me just not having the best cards for this deck's capability, we're going to be putting this Omnath in C tier. Omnath, buddy, I wish I could have done better for you, man. I really, really wish. All right, next we'll be going over Kranos. All right. Kranos, or Karanos, not whatever, man. Don't question me. Okay, so Kranos is the second time I would have tried an Is It color pairing deck. My first one actually being Malik from before. And Kranos is a god from Theros, and Theros is another one of my favorite planes because it's based off of Greek mythology. And it also introduces the devotion mechanic. And devotion is, I don't know, honestly, I forget if we already went over a devotion commander, if I already had one or not. But devotion, it's a cool idea in terms of gameplay and also lore. Because if you really think about it, like, specifically on the plane of Theros. Oh my god, I brain farted there for a second. On Theros, the more people that praise a god and even cower in fear because of them. It's giving them more power. It's the idea of acknowledgement. The more acknowledgement you give to something, the more powerful they become. And if something throughout time begins to be forgotten, then gods themselves will be forgotten, which I think is like such a cool idea, and is also like, I think, a testament to like history as well, because if more and more people don't learn something, then eventually it will just be not even unlearned, but it'll just be forgotten inherently, which is a very cool idea for a magic card. Like, I think that's the level of depth going in is so cool. But anyway, Caseynerdbro, God of Storms, 3 of any color, a red and a blue, for a 6/5 indestructible god. As long as your devotion to blue and red is less than 7, Caseynerdbro isn't a creature. And as I literally just read that, we did go over one of the gods. I already forget which one. Don't at me in whatever place if you're talking to yourself while watching this video, or if you're in the comments, don't hate me. You love me, don't you? Okay, but anyway, as long as your devotion to blue or red is less than 7, Caseynerdbro isn't a creature. Reveal the first card you draw each of your turns. So if you take multiple turns, you do this ability again. Whenever you reveal a land card this way, draw a card. Sick. Awesome. So you get to basically just draw an extra card. You get the land, and then you get whatever card is on top next. Whenever you reveal a non-land this way, Caseynerdbro deals 3 damage to any target creature or player. So basically you just get to lightning bolt someone, and lightning bolt is literally deal 3 damage to any target. So Caseynerdbro is super cool, super awesome, and this being my second attempt at a kind of like Spellslinger strategy, and this is also back at the time when I did not really like Spellslinger. I always tried to somehow have it be a creature deck. Always and forever, even if it was like creatures that like Gutter Snipe. Like, they love Gutter Snipe is a card whenever you cast a non-creature spell, deal 2 damage to any target. So it's like, yeah, like obviously you would want to put a lot more spells than creatures, but I think I just put in way too many creatures that cared about casting spells, leaving no room to cast spells. So with that all being said, we're putting Caseynerdbro in D tier, man. A really cool card, don't get me wrong, but definitely could have been a whole lot better. All right, next deck. Bellatrix, the homie. Okay, so the reason why I'm so excited is that Bellatrix is probably my favorite commander that I have built ever. Most of the time, I do keep a commander deck around for longer than I probably should, but Bellatrix and then Wilhelt, which is a card that I talked about in the last video, and then another card that we will be talking about are like my top 3 favorite commanders like that I have currently. I mean, like, I love all 9 that I currently have sleeved. And I mean, obviously, there would not be a sleeved category if I did not love them so. But Bellatrix is just the homie. He is from a set called Strixhaven, which is basically a Harry Potter universe, kind of like, it's just a magic school, and all of the and there's 5 different, it's a college. There are 5 different schools inside of like one big university, and each headmaster of each school is an elder dragon, and Bellatrix being one of those elder dragons. When choosing him, when going out and getting Bellatrix, I specifically wanted to get the full alternate art. And full art meaning it goes over the entire card from top to bottom. It's just a super awesome swamp dragon. I love this deck. It uses my life as a resource, which is very much me as a Magic player. I like to use my resources around me and use them to win the game. So with that being said, the homie, one of my favorite cards of all time, my favorite commander, and some of the coolest sleeves I have, which we will be going over in the commander specific episode of the Morning Brew happening in the future. Belarus, without further ado, going into the sleeve category, and probably like the tip, like I've already kind of done the graphic as you guys have seen, because I'm just going in order of appearance, not in order of favoritism. Belarus would probably be at the tippity top of sleeved and everything. I just love the homie so much. He's my guy for sure. Next, we are going to be talking about Krenko. All right, Krenko is the final one of these sticky note guys. I really thought I had a copy of Krenko. He might be in a box, or one of my many magic boxes that I have. And I feel like I just ended up putting him in the wrong box. I have two boxes that have all of like the 5 different colors that from miscellaneous sets, and I just think Krenko got mixed in there at some point in time. Krenko is from Ravnica, which is one of my favorite planes of existence in Magic. And he's not actually a dual colored commander as one might think coming from Ravnica. He is actually a mono red commander. Specifically mono red goblins. So this was full on goblin tribal, and you'll see why he is one of, if not the most popular mono red commander. If you open a new tab right now, and if you look up the website EDHREC, EDHREC.com, basically just an informative website showing you, the person viewing the website, all the different decks that people in the Magic community have built in specifically Commander, and it'll just give you percentages on how many people have used that as a commander, how many of them have put that card into the 99, the 99 being the 99 other cards you have in your commander deck, and also the percent and also the cost of the cards on different websites. Like, it's such an informative website. So if you're a commander player, or if you're a new commander player and have never heard of EDHREC, I highly suggest you go over and check them out. Not a sponsor of this video, just a super cool resource for you guys to be using in your own Magic careers. But anyway, Krenko Mob Boss, 2 of any color and 2 red. So for 4 mana, you'll get a 3/3 Goblin Warrior. You tap Krenko, create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. So if you have 20 goblins on the battlefield, including Krenko in that 20, if you tap him, you'll make 20 1/1 goblins. So obviously he can get out of hand very quickly. The biggest problem when it comes to token decks is obviously board wipes. However, people have been run in Commander. There has been like a switch in the meta, because obviously, just like with many other games and card games out there, there is a meta. And the meta basically is just like what's being played right now. And the meta, as of recently in these past few years, people have been running a lot more interaction. Interaction being like kill spells, counter spells, basically interacting with the board. Because when I started playing Commander, I feel like there was, in my play group as well, but also just throughout gameplay videos I watched and deck techs, a lot of people were focusing on board wipes. And that was the biggest problem that token decks really had to deal with, was that there was just so many people were running from 2 to 5, maybe even 6 board wipes in each deck, which is nowadays egregious. Like, nowadays you will only see maybe 1 to 3 maximum, I feel like, of board wipes in it. I definitely think every deck should have at least 1 board wipe, depending on your colors, obviously. If you're in white, that's a given, because white has most of the board wipes, but every color does have some sort of way of dealing with all the creatures on board. And just any sort of board wipe in general is just bad for the mono red deck, and mono red doesn't really have a whole lot of protection when it comes to that. Yeah, you can find some cards for sure, even some artifacts that'll give protection, but nothing that'll really protect you forever, only in certain given points. And here's the thing. Krenko is a really good card, and him being my first mono red commander, and also being goblins. Goblins are not hard to make at all. You can basically just slam a bunch of goblins into some sleeves and then just plow them onto the table, and you might win because when it comes to tribes, a lot of tribes being just like human tribal, dinosaur tribal, vampire tribal, goblin tribal, most of the tribes care about other creatures in that tribe. Yes, you will obviously see creatures that say warlocks, vampires, and tieflings you control have some sort of like plus to them. But most of the time, when it comes to like cards that care about a specific tribe, they will stay in that specific tribe. And at the time, I did not own very many goblin cards, so I was kind of only using these, not necessarily crappy, because goblins are a very fortunate tribe in the fact that there are thousands of goblin cards. From all the way from common to uncommon, rare to mythic. There are goblins from A to Z that you can just go and get and put into your deck, which is really awesome and everything. But definitely at the time of building, and also at the time of just me as a player being somewhat new when I built Krenko, I did not have many good goblins to work with, let's say. And I definitely wasn't really going into goblin tokens, which I definitely think I should have delved more into, because there's a lot of goblins out there that like to create other goblin tokens. I think I really focused on the quote-unquote just good goblins, like a goblin that does something very cool, but does not necessarily care about other goblins. If I would rebuild it now, I would definitely just go right into goblin token and just find every single goblin card that could make a token. Oh, that was a whole other thing, is that I only used basics. I didn't run Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Myriad Landscape. I didn't run any other land than a mountain, but I did not use a mountain. I instead used a Pokemon TCG Fire Energy. And let's just say that yes, it was funny for my friends once or twice, but after that, they would get kind of annoyed that like, okay, like the joke is, haha, Casey's funny. He spent money on energy when he should have just used the crap ton of basic lands he already owns. Like, haha, that's funny. But also, there was one time I sat down at a local game store with my friend Harry, as I've mentioned in many other videos. We sat down and we played with just these regulars at the store, and I brought Krenko to the table, and they did not think it was funny at all. They thought it was stupid. But the guy who worked at the store, who I told that to, he thought it was hilarious, but like hilariously stupid. So I think it really depends on everything if you really want to do that. Like, I think for the bit, it's really, really, really funny. But other than the bit, I don't think, and it also kind of depends on who you're playing with as well. So with all of that being said, and after a long-winded talk about Krenko, we're putting him in D tier. I feel like I was kind of hyping him up through all that talk and everything, but the deck that I built was not very good. I didn't delve into goblin tokens. I simply just went goblin tribal. Not even good goblin tribal, just goblins at the end of the day. All right. Next, we will be going over Animar. This is really bringing me back, guys. This is really, really bringing me back. The couple of decks that we will be going over today a lot of them are recent, but a lot of them are also from the very beginning of my commander career and everything. And Zakama was the first commander that I ever built, who we talked about in the last video. Animar is the second. And Animar was also used to be my favorite card of all time. Like, I thought everything about him is amazing and is still amazing, don't get me wrong, but like, I did not build him well at all, and I will explain why in a second after reading. Animar, Soul of Elements. For a blue, a red, and a green, you get a 1/1 legendary creature elemental. As we were talking about elementals earlier, yeah, he was in the elemental deck, so like, obviously. Could we talk about this artwork for a second? Oh my god! Peter Mobracker, I hope I pronounced that correctly. You did an absolutely fucking amazing job. You perfectly, not only is the composition of this incredible, but like the pose is just everything. And even if you looked at him and if you didn't know, like, this is a really good thing that I think certain Magic artists are really good at. Without even knowing the color pairing of Animar, if you were a Magic player and if you just saw the artwork, I think you would be able to see why he is a teamer commander, being blue, red, and green. Like, I think it's just so it's so on the nose, but like so perfect at the same time. And Animar has had a few different art. I think they've only had actually 2 different arts, but I love the original artwork, which is what I have right here. I do not own the newer one. I used the newer one for some sort of art that you saw or that you will see on screen when I read him. But let's just delve right back into it then. Protection from white and black, which is already freaking sick. So if you have a black kill spell, sorry, nah. If you have a white board wipe, sorry, nah. Not working on my mans here. If he were to attack a creature, or if he were to attack with a creature that's obviously bigger than him, so if Animar is very small, power and toughness wise, if you blocked with a black creature or a white creature, they're just going to bounce off each other because Animar has protection from that. So automatically, having the protection from those 2 specific colors is so important. Yes, Animar can get countered, and yes, can be dealt damage through red and blue, but like, come on, dude. Having protection from any color of that matter is so good. Like, what? Anyway, though, that's only one of his 3 abilities. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Animar, Soul of Elements. Sick, super awesome, dope, dope, dope. Creature spells you cast cost 1 generic mana less to cast for each +1/+1 counter on Animar. So that is really the main thing that people use, or that I think people would use when it comes to Animar deck building and everything. So, and that is also the reason why my deck was so bad. So here's how I built him. I put in a lot of large creatures in this, which you might be thinking, oh, that's not that bad, you know? Like, if Casey has a lot of small creatures as well, then he can get those really big creatures out for almost free. That would be the case if I had any small creatures. I guarantee you, when I built this deck, Animar probably was the smallest costing creature, which was 3. So I almost guarantee that I had creatures 4 mana cost or greater and no one below that. Like, I almost guarantee it. And it really just was my hubris at the time. I just thought that I would get enough mana and I had enough mana ramp to get all of those big creatures out there, but most of the time I would just end up drawing a card for my turn, not do anything, discard a card, and pass the turn. Because if you did not already know, you can only have, at the end of your turn, unless a card says otherwise, you have to have 7 cards in your hand total. You can have less than 7, obviously, but you can't have more than 7 cards. That's what I should have said. You cannot have more than 7 cards in your deck. So that was kind of it. And also, like, it did make me a little peeved off, if you will, that a little peeved off. It did peeve me off a little bit that one time me and my other friend I went to high school with, he also had an Animar deck, and one day we just sat down and played we played against each other because we wanted to see who was the best Animar player. And the entire time during the game, I just literally drew cards, discarded them, and I didn't do anything. And I think the one time I was able to cast Animar, I think I got countered or like destroyed immediately. So it didn't make me feel good. Obviously, my deck just felt so inferior, which is a really funny sentence if you change deck to something else, but anyway, my Animar was far less superior, but I still love this card though, and at the end of the day, like, that is really what we're ranking here. I mean, yes, we're ranking the deck entirely, but also we're ranking the cards as well. And with that all being said, like, I have such a soft spot for him and everything, and even though the deck itself wasn't very good, it still won a couple games, and that was also really just because of the fact that we all weren't the best deck builders or really, like, the best players of Magic at the beginning, which is like, no one is ever going to be good at something right off the bat. And if you are, then you're just born with that skill, you know, like, it just comes naturally to you. And Magic is something that doesn't really come naturally to a lot of people. It didn't come naturally to me when I started playing, you know, like, I'm all right at the game. I don't think I'll ever be quote unquote amazing or like even good for all that matter. I just have fun at the end of the day. And that is like what the game is all about. And I had a ton of fun playing with Animar, which is why he's going in B tier, just simply because of the fact I love him so freaking much, and he's the homie. I know I've been saying that a lot about these cards, and I know these cards are inanimate, and I probably know that if I were to be teleported to any plane of existence with them, I would probably die by them, and they would just like not think of anything. But I like them. I would hang with them. I think they're pretty cool. Next, we're going to be talking about Neheb, though. And Neheb is really cool. So, I've always wanted to build a Neheb deck. I picked them up very early on in my Magic career, and I kind of just like had them stick around for a while. I think Neheb was actually in my Animar deck, and I think they actually were in the 99 and a couple of other ones, but I wanted to try and build a Neheb deck. And as I read it, you'll probably understand why I like this card a lot. So, Neheb the Eternal, 3 of any color and double red for a 4/6 zombie Minotaur warrior with Afflict 3, and Afflict 3 reads, whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. So whenever you attack with Neheb, the defending player has 2 options. They can block, but if they choose to block, they will be dealt 3 damage inherently. And if they chose to block with a creature, that creature might die because Neheb is a 4/6, which is a big body. Or they're just gonna instead of taking 3 damage and losing a creature, they will take 4 damage, which doesn't really sound bad on the surface because you do have 40 life. However, if you get to 21 commander damage, you automatically lose the game. So some people might be standoffish from losing just 4 life, and they might instead sacrifice 3 life with no commander damage and a creature for that, especially if it's a token, you know, just chump block, you know. Or if you have 6 tokens, that would be even better. You can just kill Neheb with 6 1/1s. But the other ability is at the beginning of your post-combat main phase. So in Magic, there is a turn order. You don't just like play cards. You have to go in a certain order. There's untap, so anything that is tapped, like Krenko we mentioned earlier, you have to tap them, so flipping them sideways. So this is the point in time when you'd untap them and flip them back up so they can be used again this turn. Then you have your upkeep. The upkeep is just a phase where if a card says do something on your upkeep, that is when you would do it. Then you have your draw phase, you just draw a card, and then after drawing a card, then you enter your main phase. And main phase is just when you can cast your spells, creatures, activate abilities, do whatever you want. And then after that, you'll have combat. And then combat is when you can attack, defend, do some little tricky things, all of that. And then after that, you'll have a second main phase, and this is your last time to cast sorceries, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, all of that, and then activate abilities as well. And then after that, you'll have an end phase, which is just like if something says do something on your end step, that's when you'll do that. If you want to cast, that's your last time to cast an instant, because instants can be cast at any point in time. But Neheb specifically cares about the post-combat main phase, which is main phase 2 after combat. So at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red mana to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So if you've casted a lot of burn spells, which are just like that card Lightning Bolt, like I mentioned earlier, deal 3 damage to any target. If you've dealt 3 damage to a player, because it specifically says opponents, it does not say creatures, specifically to opponents, which does indeed go with the Afflict 3 that he has and everything, you will get 3 red mana, which is so good. So basically the whole point of Neheb would to be put a lot of damage dealing cards in there, whether it be Spell Slinger, or whether it would just be damage dealing, or whether it would be some sort of enter the battlefield effect, like an Impact Tremors of some sort, you know? Like you just want to deal damage to your opponent and then get more mana later, so then you can deal damage to your opponent again. So technically, this deck is sleeved right now. I have the deck box over there with 99 other cards. The only thing is that I've played Neheb twice now, and I've tried building him twice, this being the second iteration. The last time I built him was not too long ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And the thing is, I've never really enjoyed playing with him. It's really unfortunate, but like I really do like Neheb. It's just that I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the decks that I'm building, because that Neheb is specifically like Spellslinger kind of thing and other creatures that care about me casting damage spells and all of that. Maybe it's that specific place I'm going, but I think I will be unsleeving him sooner or later. I'm just not. Again, I've only played him twice. He's been sleeved for a few months now, and I've only played him twice. So I'm never actively picking to play him when I'm in my little pod of friends and we're like, oh, let's play Commander. Casey, what are you playing with? I'm never choosing Neheb, like 9 out of 10 times. So with that all being said, I'm going to be placing him in C tier, unfortunately. I wish I liked him more. I don't know what about it I don't like. Maybe, I think it might just be me, honestly. Like, I think I've either just put cards in there I don't like, or some strategy is just not clicking in my mind, or maybe it's just that the strategy is just too streamlined. Like, it's only pure damage, and that's kind of it. It's fine to have a simple and just, like, forward-thinking game plan, but, like, after a while, I kind of do like the chaos of everything. I like going in more than one direction with something. Like Belladros, for example. Belladros can be a token deck, but he can also be a life gain deck. He can also be a life loss deck. And I specifically delved into all 3 of those. The more different strategies you have going on, the more likelihood that you won't win because there's too many things going on. But in my mind, you should always have more than one thing going on, because what if that one strategy doesn't work out? What if my opponent has an anti-token strategy? So it's like, okay, well, my deck that is not primarily tokens can still do the other 2 things that it likes to do. I'm not just stuck in this loop of, oh, I play a token, my token dies, then I just play another token. So maybe that's really it. Maybe I just don't like the fact that of how one note Neheb is. Yeah, so that is why Neheb is in C tier, and then we will be right back after I change the battery on my camera so the light can stop flashing at me. We only have a few more over to go. We only have a few more left to go over, guys, so bear with me. We'll be going over Gizhath. Gizhath is another sleeved commander, so he'll be going up in the tippity top tier, and I love him because he is a dinosaur deck, but he is specifically a dinosaur deck that actually cares about other dinosaurs. Not like Zakama, which is begging to be a combo deck. I built him in a specifically dinosaur tribal. Gizhath is specifically play dinosaur tribal. And another really cool thing about my Gizhath deck specifically, it's not just 100 cards. And what I obviously don't play with a large ass commander deck, no. So I actually have 2 decks at the start of the game. I have 50-ish cards of just like lands, some instant sorceries, enchantments, and artifacts in there. And then also Gizhath being, because like if you want to add it up to 100, you got to add him in there. And the rest of those should be dinosaur cards. That's where all of the other dinosaurs would come in. However, I have a separate deck of like 80 or so dinosaurs. And at the beginning of the game, when I'm shuffling up my deck, I first shuffle up the dino deck. That's specifically just dinosaur cards. I shuffle them up, and I put in about like 34 to 35. Obviously, the math is not mathing right now. I don't specifically know the numbers off the top of my head, but all you really need to know is that I shuffle up that deck, and then I take the top 30-ish or whatever, and then I put those into the deck, and those are the dinosaurs that I will be playing with that game, because dinosaurs are one of my favorite tribes in Magic, and there's just too many that I like. If there was a 5-color dinosaur deck that's not like a changeling commander or is just a placeholder, I would like for there to eventually be a 5-color dinosaur deck, because even though there aren't that many blue or black dinosaurs, I would still like to incorporate them into an eventual just dinosaur zoo deck, which zoo just kind of being just, look at all these cool different, I want to just have a cool little Jurassic Park themed deck, and just Jurassic Park not being the cards that Magic has for Jurassic Park, but specifically of the fact that you're going around, if you think of my deck as a park, you're going around and you're looking at all these cool different dinosaurs that all do cool different things. So that was my intention with Gizhath, and every single time I've played him, it has been a different experience, and I love that. So I don't think I will ever get tired of this as long as new dinosaur cards are being invented so that I can sleeve them into my deck. So with that being said, obviously Gizhath is sleeved and is one of my favorite decks that I have made. All right, next we shall be talking about Junji. So I definitely don't think that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it. So Junji is a mono black commander and is one of my first attempts at mono black commanders. And Junji is freaking awesome. So I've gotten a lot of compliments from my friends on how I built this deck and everything. And 1 or 2 times my friends have played with it and they realized, oh, Casey put some powerful things in here. That's kind of crazy. So, and I just really wanted to create a mono black reanimator, and reanimator being if something would die, it just comes back either at that point in time or later or something like that of sorts. So things are constantly dying and being brought back. But Junji, the Midnight Sky, is a 5/5 dragon spirit for 3 of any color and double black. You get a flying menace, and then whenever Junji dies, choose 1. Each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life, which is like, whatever. I almost never chose that, only in dire circumstances. And the other effect being, put target non-dragon creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, you lose 2 life. And also, like, I don't care if I'm losing that 2 life, because I am getting a big, awesome impactful creature from my graveyard back onto the battlefield. So I think I had a little bit of self-mill in here as well, and milling is a mechanic that I don't know if I've talked about, but it's basically just taking the top cards of your library and then putting them into your graveyard. So in mono black specifically, there is a lot of cards that say if this, it could either be an instant or sorcery, or it could be an enchantment that states when when the creature attached to this or the creature that is targeted by the spell would die this turn or just die in general, they come back. So that is what I would attach or target Junji with. So I would literally have him on the battlefield, do his thing, and then at any given point, like, I really want that card back at this point because I think it would be really nice to have. So I would target Junji with those spells and then either move to combat, swing with him, and then just have him die, or I would have a sacrifice outlet and then he would die, the trigger would happen, I get a thing back, and Junji just comes back. So this is a super awesome fun card to play with, super awesome to build. As I'm rereading it, I'm like, maybe I'll build this again in the future. Which has been really fun to figure out, like, of the decks that I've been going over with you guys, of which ones I really do want to rebuild and which ones I do really hold near and dear to my heart versus the ones that I thought I held so dear, and I've kind of been rethinking. But with that being said, Junji is going in freaking S tier, bro. I love this dude, and, like, it was just so much fun to play. I can't exactly remember why I took it apart. Was it because... No, because I already would have had Will Help by the time of building him, so... That's very interesting. I don't know why I took him apart, but I definitely took him apart for some reason, so... I don't know. Who really knows? Why do people even do anything? That's a very good question to ask. Yeah. Can you tell I'm tired? I've had a day so far, and I still wanted to come and film this video for you guys, so appreciate that. Or don't. I don't really care, honestly. I just hope you guys are doing well and having a great day. That's all I really care about. If I have a bad day, who really gives a shit, you know? Like, I just want you guys to have a good day and have a good life, you know? That's all I really care about. Next, we're going to be talking about Storvald. So Storvald is one of my least favorite decks I have ever created in my entire life, and he also sucked. Like, this card is not amazing. I'm just gonna say that outright. And he is from one of the D&D precons. He was not the leader of the deck, but I just made him my commander because I saw, I think it was a preview video of when this guy got, like, spoiled or previewed to the public before he got printed, and I was like, oh, that's such a cool idea. I think I could pull off this crazy, stupid strategy that will obviously not work and will not be as polished as other strategies out there. So let's just read him, and then I'll explain what I was doing. So Storvald, Frost Giant Jarl, I think that's how you say that. 4 of any color, a green, a white, and a blue, so Bant color pairing. 7/7, Ward 3. There's that ability I'm not a fan of. It's not that I don't like Ward, but the fact that it's on a legendary creature is fine by me. It's just don't overuse it. Other creatures you control have Ward 3. Ward 3 is crazy. Paying 3 extra? Oh. I'm starting to figure out why I kind of don't like him even more. Even more so. Whenever Storvald enters the battlefield or attacks, choose one or both. Target creature has base power and toughness 7/7 until end of turn. Target creature has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. With that being said, people might think that, oh, maybe Casey wanted to have his creatures become 7/7s. No, No, I didn't. I wanted this deck to be a combat trick deck, and combat tricks are basically like, remember when I was explaining in Neheb with like the different phases of a turn and everything. I was trying to have Storvald be just this unstoppable force. So the whole point was to swing with Storvald during combat, have one of my opponent's creatures, hypothetically whichever one blocked him, just lose all of their abilities and just be super small, and then boost Storvald's attack so he was even bigger, trampling over my opponents. I'm just gonna say it right now, it didn't work out at all. I played him maybe 2 times, and even at this time of Storvald, when he came out, I was working at a local game store. And I talked with Magic players every day, and I really got to know them, and I really delved into the local community for Magic, because there was a lot more people playing this game than I thought there was, and it was so awesome and so cool to interact with these people. And after telling people what I wanted to do with him, everyone was kind of like, I don't think that'll work. And I was like, no, like, I can do this, like, it'll work, I'll make it work. And I didn't make it work. It was not fun to do, it was very boring, and it got old only after 2 times, and I didn't even have fun with those 2 times I played him. I lost royally. So with that being said, Storvald is going into D tier for just, I don't even really think many people have built him, honestly, and if you have built Storvald before, or if you're thinking of building him, please let me know what you would do or what you have done, and if you've won with these strategies, you know, because I think he's a cool idea. I don't even know if he's a cool idea, you know, like, I just read him and I'm like, meh, you know, like, I'm just so meh about it. Like, I don't even know what caught my eye when I saw him for the first time. Like, oh, wow, that's so cool. That's such an interesting ability. I have no idea what brought me to that, to that idea. But let's go over the next one, being Mishra. All right, Mishra is really cool. So in terms of lore, Mishra is super, super important. He's not the first villain, but he's like the first major villain, or one of the first major villains in Magic. He is brothers to Urza. He's not a good guy, let's say that. He is definitely a villain, but he's on the side of good. He's a really bad guy working with good guys, if that makes sense. And he's doing a quote-unquote good thing, but just because a bad person does a good thing, that does not make them a good person. You have to constantly do that and work on yourself and build yourself up to being a good person. You can't just be one outright. You have to actually work for it. And Mishra, I don't know if I understood him, but I definitely felt like I liked him a whole lot more than Urza. And his card is so sick. This is another Grixis commander, so blue, black, and red color pairing. Mishra, Eminent 1, 2 of any color, a blue, a black, and a red, for a 5/4 human artificer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of target non-creature artifact you control, except its name is Mishra's war form, and it's a 4/4 construct artifact creature token in addition to its other types. It gains haste until end of turn, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And also the next end step being not the next opponent's end step, but whichever end step is next in terms of order, which will most likely be your end step. So the whole point of the deck was to not go artifact creature tribal, was to kind of go artifact tribal. So Mishra allowed me to create these copies of artifacts that weren't creatures and turned them into creatures. So this gave me the opportunity to have 2 of a card that I normally would not have because of the commander rules being you can only have one of each card, named card. So, for example, Land War Elves. It's an elf that taps for green mana. You can't have two Land War Elves in your deck because they both say Land War Elves. There's a lot of other elves out there that do tap for green mana that you can have in your deck, but you can't have two of the same. And Mishra actually allowed me to have multiple of the same. And I also delved a little bit into a copy creature mechanic. So I didn't go full on into copying the copies because I wanted to try and get around them leaving the battlefield. So I did put in a few cards that say end the turn so that I wouldn't need to sacrifice the tokens at the end of the turn, which I think was a really cool get around with that and everything. So, with that being said, Mishra, so in terms of lore, Mishra's awesome. One of my favorite characters in the Magic universe and everything. And also a great card, great colors for what he is doing. And I thought I came up with a really cool strategy for him. So with that all being said, guys, Mishra's going in B tier. I took him apart because I didn't want to build another Grixis deck, but I wanted to use cards in his deck. So I think that's the main reason why I took him apart. I think I also was maybe making my friends' decks at that time, and my friends in Pittsburgh specifically, they don't really have cards to play with, so I just let them use mine. So I'm lending them parts of my collection, but I'm sure they know that as soon as they either don't want to play Magic anymore, or if they get bored of Magic, or if anything were to happen with them wanting to not play Magic anymore, I'm just taking those decks apart. Sorry, my guy, but these are my cards, and I would like to play with said cards, It's not that I can't play their obviously I can play their decks if I want to, but I see them as theirs and not mine kind of thing, even though those are my cards. So, yeah. Next we'll be going over is Daxos. So Daxos is the final one of these pre-con decks that will be going. Or actually, no, I shouldn't even say that. As I'm looking at the other one, I'm like, oh, wait, no, that was a pre-con dummy, even though it doesn't have the pre-con set on it. Because most of the time nowadays, if something is a pre-con, it'll have its own specific insignia that clarifies that for the reader of the card. But at this given point, they didn't invent that yet, so whatever. Daxos the Return. So this would be the other commander deck, just like the Mizzix one or the I already forget his name, the Malik deck. So I did get this commander deck. I did not pay for it. Yeah, which is, again, a whole other conversation, a whole other story. Daxos the Returned is a one of any color, a white and a black for a 2/2 zombie soldier, and this guy is from Theros, which is awesome. And in terms of story and lore, his character does not directly impact the main story of Theros all that much, but his individual story, in my mind, is so good. I don't know what it was, but it really caught my attention, and it really made me realize that, characters show up on more than just their card. They can show up in multiple other iterations, whether if it's not a creature, if it's a creature like Daxos can appear on an enchantment or a sorcery, and it'll have part of his story being told. So it was a whole realization in my mind, which is kind of why I do hold him near and dear as well, just being one of my favorite characters in Magic. But what he reads is, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you get an experience counter. And an experience counter is a counter that is not on the battlefield. It's in your command zone area. It's in an area outside of the game, so people can't mess with it. Experience counters cannot go up or down it's only once they are fulfilled. So with this being said, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, the spell can be countered. You still cast it. You still spend the mana to cast it. For one of any color, a white and a black. So for his casting cost, its ability is put a white and black spirit enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. It has this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of experience counters you have. So if you have 20 experience counters, you are paying 3 mana to get a 20/20 guy. And when I built him, and not even built him, I just took the precon and I upgraded it ever so slightly. And the precon he was in wasn't horrible, but again, the mana base, and also the mana base that I kind of gave it because of the fact that I did not own many good lands at the time. So this deck just was really slow, and it did care about enchantments because this was the start of my enchantment loving thing that I have going on right now. Like, I love the enchantment card type, and Theros, actually, no, they did not invent the enchant, but they really dove into the enchantment card type and everything, which is, again, super cool, and I love that. Enchantments being one of my favorite card types, I'm glad a whole set got, like, this card type, or a whole set focused on this card type. I thought it was a cool idea and everything. Even giving it to creatures, which I think Theros invented that. I think Theros invented creature cards being able to be enchantments, like all the gods and everything. So obviously the whole point of the deck is to cast a bunch of enchantments, and even if they get countered, who cares, like, you're still getting that experience counter. Spending the mana to just get some giant tokens, and these tokens aren't legendary, so you can have a bunch of these different tokens. But with all that being said, I do really, really like this guy, and I don't think I like him enough to move him up from the tier. I think because of, again, how badly it was, because of it being an old precon, not very much upgraded, and didn't really have much going on, I think we're going to be putting this guy into the D tier, unfortunately. Sorry, buddy, but you're really cool and you're awesome, but you're not incredible. I love you, buddy. I love you. I truly do. And I think that is a testament of the fact that, yes, you do at some point have to kill your darlings, which is a term that I learned in film school, actually, where even though you really like something, what purpose does it really hold other than the fact that you like it? You're still gonna have to, like, at some point in time, there's gonna be a point where it's like, just because you shouldn't have something in your film just because you like it, it should serve a purpose. It should have a meaning. And Daxos, unfortunately, did not really have a purpose or a meaning, but I would love to rebuild him and make him have a purpose or meaning. There we go. That one's good. All right. So the final two we'll be talking about, and I already know the order for this. So first, we're going to be talking about Korvold. Korvold, the Fey Cursed King. So in the last episode, I talked about a Jund deck being black, red, and green that I had before I had Tana and what's-her-face, Last of the Abzan. That was a Jund deck, and I talked a little bit about me owning a Jund deck before them, and I took it apart because it didn't end up being a lot of fun for my opponents after a while. And Korvold is this deck. And so let me just read the card, and I think you guys can explain what is maybe not so fun to play against and everything. So Korvold, the Fey Cursed King, 2 of any color, a black, a red, and a green, for a 4/4 Dragon Noble with flying. Whenever Korvold, Fey Cursed King, enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and draw a card. So on the surface, you might be thinking like, oh, what's so bad about to play against it? It doesn't sound like you're going to be sacrificing my things. It just sounds like you're going to be sacrificing your things. Yes, that is 100% true. I will only be sacrificing my things. However, eventually, I'm going to have too many things on the battlefield that say, when you sacrifice something, do this. And when that happens one time, one thing will go off and say, oh, you sacrifice something, do this. Oh, you sacrifice something, do that. Oh, you sacrifice something, do that. So it's just this chain of events that it's a whole snake. Like, it snakes down the line, and then it just keeps going. And I did not have an infinite combo in this deck, but it really felt like I did, because I said in the last video that, like, oh, taking 20 minutes for a turn is like insane and probably won't happen. I took 10-minute turns with this card. And that's insane. Like, yes, like, I do think if you're really trying to think of something, if you're trying to, like, get a strategy out there, if you're really, and even if you're trying to win the game in one turn, you know, maybe not like the first turn you play, obviously, but like, if you're trying to end the game in one go, it's going to take a lot of mental capacity to figure all of that out, especially if it's not laid out exactly for you. And that is what really Corvold was. Obviously, like, how you win the game, there's many ways you can win. What if there's a card that says, whenever you sacrifice a permanent, deal 1 damage to each opponent? Oh, so you're telling me I only need to sacrifice 39 things to do that? What if there was a thing that said every time you sacrifice a creature or a creature dies, you make a token? Oh, great. So I have a token that I can just then sacrifice. And so on and so forth. So there's so many different things that kind of culminated into this not so fun experience. And you might be thinking, like, oh, like, I don't really care that you're doing all of this, and who cares that you take like a 5 to 10 minute turn where you think you might win the game but you don't. If I'm just a random person at a game store, and if we have a little game, you know, like, oh, you went against my deck only one time, so you're like, you have that one experience. Versus my friends, where at one point in time we were playing Magic with each other over a summer almost every single day. And let me tell you, after playing Magic every single day, you're gonna understand strategies, mechanics, and even understand when the game is over before the game is over, you know? Like, you're gonna stop thinking like checkers and you're gonna start thinking of chess, kind of thing. So that's why this deck is not fun to play against. It just gets out of hand far too quickly, and the only way to really get rid of it is not just getting rid of Corvold. You need to get rid of every other sacrifice outlet and somehow be able to also exile my graveyard, which, yes, there are a lot of cards that do that. You don't want to have one card slot in your deck be dictated to one if I play that deck against you. What if you have an instant that says exile target graveyard and then da-da-da-da-da? Well, what if you're going against me thinking that I'm playing Corvold, but I don't bring out Corvold. I bring out I bring out Gishhath. You're like, oh, dinosaurs don't care about the graveyard, so one of the cards in my deck is just useless. So that's another problem I ran into, is that, especially with me and my friends, like, sometimes, yes, like in your playgroup and pod, you will choose cards and put cards in your deck dependent on what your opponent will play. But let's be real, most of the time, if you go against a random person, you're not going to know every single card in that deck, because because the likelihood that you will see every card in the deck is not high. Like, is extremely high. Most of the time you will never see all of the cards at once, and most of the time you're only going to be going against that deck maybe one time, and if you're in a tournament, then maybe 2 to 3 times, you know? So that's my thing, is that, like, I don't think you should I don't think you should have one of your card slots or even multiple card slots of your deck go into countering one specific type of deck. So then you're taking this whole time and thinking like, oh, what if my opponent has Corvold and you have 5 cards that exile graveyards? And yeah, they could be playing a deck that does care about the graveyard, but what if they're not? Then that means 5 of the cards in your 99 card deck are useless. Like you might cast them to get some sort of cast trigger, but you're not gonna they're kind of wasted. I hope this explanation makes sense and everything. And if it doesn't, then I just did a really bad job of explaining it. But with that all being said, Corvold is going into A tier. It would be S tier because, again, the card is great. The deck I had was one of my favorite decks I've ever created. And am I thinking about rebuilding Corvold? A little bit, yes. But I really need to make sure that I don't get too out of hand. As a Magic player, if you're not going truly competitive and if you're just having fun, you need to be aware, like, okay, when does this stop being fun? When does this just become an immovable force or an unmovable object, Like, you have to have that foresight when you're building the deck. If you are going truly competitive and if you're trying to win as soon as possible and if you don't care about your other opponents, then by all means, build Corvold and go as brutal as you want with that strategy. But if you really do truly value your friends and their friendship and the relationships you've built with them, and if you really want to play Magic with them, maybe they're a new player and you really want them to get in there, how would it feel if you're a new player and if you saw your opponent playing these 5 to 10 minute turns and all you do is play a land, cast one spell, maybe move to combat, and then you pass the turn? Because most of the time, that is what a starting Magic player will do. They will do 1 or 2 things in their turn, and then that's it. They don't really, again, because they don't have the foresight to think that far ahead. They're just starting out, And unfortunately, you are in that position of like, you do know to think multiple turns ahead. You do know what strategy your opponent is doing, but they don't know what you're doing. So and this is also not a thing against my friends. Like they definitely knew what I was doing and how I was doing it and how fast I was doing it. But I could just tell by looking at their faces while playing that this wasn't a whole lot of fun sometimes. And again, as a Magic player, it's kind of you should think about that, you should take a look and be like, okay, this isn't fun. How can I make it more fun? All right. So A tier for Corvold. I already said that, but yeah. All right. The final deck we'll be going over is, yes, another sleeved deck, but I did save him for last for a little bit of a purpose, and it is Yarok the Desecrated. So Yarok the Desecrated is currently the longest deck that I have around. So Yarok the Desecrated came out in Magic 20, which is the set he came out in. The same set that the 3-color Omnath deck, Omnath Locus of the Royal, that deck. So I built them around the same time. And also and Magic 20, it says Magic 20, but just like with like the NBA games or the NFL games, all of the sports games, they're always a year ahead. It's always like NBA 2, like this year we're probably going to be getting NBA 2K25. Like they're always a year ahead. So same thing with Magic. Like this deck came out in 2019, or this card came out in 2019, and that's when I built it, and that is how long Yarok has been around. And the reason why, like, the whole point of Yarok is enter the battlefield effects, and there are so many Magic cards out there that care about entering the battlefield, or will just say, enter the battlefield, do this. Something simple as Land War Elves, like, I'm sorry, not Land War Elves, but Wood Elves. Wood Elves says, enter the battlefield, search for a forest. And Yarok dictates that, hey, I saw you enter the battlefield and you had an enter the battlefield ability. Do that again. And that's the whole point of the deck. But so it's a very simple deck at the end of the day, but you can build it in 200,000 different ways. There are so many different enter the battlefield creatures that you can put almost any of them in here, and they might automatically be good simply because of the fact that they're happening twice. So I'm not going to be reading or going over the card because we're saving that for the other episode of me actually going in depth with all of the commander decks that I've made. But Yarok is a special case, and why I wanted to end off, because he is one of my favorite. And even though Belladros, the deck that we talked a little bit earlier about, he is my favorite commander deck that I have, but Yarok was at one point my favorite, and I've loved them so much. And it just goes to show how attached we Magic players get to certain decks. So Yarok, even though he's not my favorite deck anymore, I never, ever don't think I will take them apart because of how attached I am to them. And I'm actually going to be taking on a pretty big feat. I'm going to try and not upgrade Yarok specifically, but upgrade all of the cards that are already in there. And you might be thinking, what does that mean? So Magic, as you've learned, there's a lot of different artwork and there's a lot of different foiling, so like how shiny the card is. So the next task, because personally I think my Yarok deck might not be getting better, I think it's already really, really good unless a card is just automatically insane and I have to put him in, which has been the case in a few times. Like enter the battlefield cards will always be a thing in Magic, so there will always be the chance that one will come out in the next set or the set after that I will put in Yarok. But the whole point I'm trying to say is that the next task on my Magic journey with Yarok is to get all of the different artworks for cards and put them into the Yarok deck. So if there's an alternate art for Rampaging Baloths, which there is, I looked it up actually, and there's a specific there's a very specific printing that I got actually, and it was really cheap. So that was one step, and if there's an alternate art for another card, I want to put that alternate art in there. So I think as a commander player, we can go in a whole lot of different ways. We can quote unquote bling out a deck if we so want to. Commander is a format where you don't have to change. You can build a deck one time, and if you really like that and if you see no issue, then you never ever have to upgrade if you don't want to. You can just have it stay stagnant and everything. Now obviously if you want your deck to become better and if you want it to grow and if you want to grow as a Magic player, I would highly suggest upgrading your decks on a semi-normal basis. And what I mean by that is that kind of like with Yarok, for example. I've taken out a handful of cards and I've put handfuls into the deck, but I haven't made any crazy changes. Like at the end of the day, Yarok will always be a enter the battlefield commander, and I will never be changing that and everything. So with that all being said, he's going into the sleeved commander deck, and I'm so happy I got to end this video off with one of my favorite decks of all time and telling you guys a little bit on what my next Magic journey will kind of be, which is upgrading that deck specifically, but putting in a little bit more money into it than I did. This is me also trying to figure out how to transition to the end of the video. But yeah, I'm just going to be finishing my non-disclosed big company coffee and call it a day with you guys. So thank you all so much for sticking through this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having an amazing day, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Again, thank you so much for watching. Go out, drink some coffee, play some Magic, have a good day, and I'll be seeing you guys on another episode of the Morning Brew. Have a good one, everyone. Yeah.